are you tonight?
I am well. Thanks for doing this. It's impromptu, and I love that because I was going to be outside a minute ago, and then I just had to pivot. So I had to just be okay with that. And I'm actually going to take these glasses off because I'm getting the reflection in the screen.
I had a similar story. I was outside. We had planned to do this outside, and there was a giant mosquito that decided to join me. So I was like, nope, going inside, and we're just going to work with
Yeah,
the window.
it was meant for us to be inside then. That's okay.
Well, I love it. So we're already purpose driven, and we haven't even started talking yet. This is
Yep.
fantastic. So thanks so much for joining me tonight. I didn't announce this until a few minutes ago on my social media because it's a very new initiative that I just wanted to kind of try and see where it went. And so I'll be relying on everyone to give feedback. So comment or email us, let us know afterwards if you feel like this was really helpful, and we'll do more. I have a whole list of people I want to bring on, so this could go as big as you want. But really, the
Yay.
purpose, really the purpose of tonight's discussion is to go into for both men and women. How do we still flourish in our work, which, as you know, is kind of the name of my business, and what I'm here to do is help you flourish in your work. How do we still flourish in our work despite kind of this, inner critic that we all have?
Mhm.
Maybe we are lacking some of that outer confidence. I don't know if any of you are like me and seeing these time hop posts or pictures or whatever from a year ago
Mhm.
and seeing skinny former self who was not sitting around eating ice
Yes.
cream in a house all day every day. um, and just feeling either bad about the way we look or feeling that inner critic voice. And, it's something that I feel like is not only really timely, but it's something that I'm kind of passionate about the fact that this is something that people don't talk about a lot. It's not always
Yeah.
okay to talk about. And I
Yeah.
feel like, men in the audience, please correct me, but I feel like for men, it's even less okay to talk about.
Mm.
Um, and so I really just, this was on my heart, this topic. And, I don't care that it's not okay to talk about. I like breaking rules. And so we're going to break a rule tonight and we're going to talk about it.
Let's do it.
So
Let's do it.
I have a very, very special guest joining me with very little notice and just a kind friend of mine, Myra, who really, works on this topic. I've attended a couple of Myra's sessions around this topic and thought that she would be a
Mhm.
fantastic guest to have for this. So, um, to borrow a phrase from a good mentor and friend of mine, Brandon Smith, we're just going to jam on this topic and see where it goes.
Let's
So,
do it. I love it.
Myra, will you just tell people, I mean, they know your name is Myra, but anyone in my audience who is familiar with you, just, your name and your company, what your company does?
Sure. First, I have to just acknowledge you and your courage and your passion behind this.
Thank
Always
you.
seeking to help people. Yeah. So thank you for doing this. And then thanks for inviting me to do this. And I, as you mentioned, have a business. It's called Capri Brand, and it's a personal branding company. And I really focus on helping. My target audience is women, but I tell people that I help men and women.
Mhm.
Helping people to really tap into their inner confidence and show that in their outward appearance. So making sure that they show up
Mhm.
looking how they feel. Or if they don't feel good about themselves, helping them to do the work to feel good about themselves so that can project on the outside. So it's a lot of inner confidence work. And then I do the outside kind of grooming, if you will, through wardrobe consultations and helping people learn how to shop and makeup and all of the things that you
Mhm.
use to polish your outward appearance.
Oh, I love it. And it's so needed. I need to
Mhm.
get my consultation from you here whenever this pandemic passes. But
I am always available.
such important work. So thank you for all that you do to help us show up
Yes.
working our best. Really, so and when I was thinking about kind of how I wanted to start, maybe it would be helpful for people to hear just the connection between this inner critic and um, the outer appearance piece, because I know that this is
Hmm.
something that you're really passionate about and you've explained it really well in the past. How are those two things connected?
Yeah, so the term you use, inner critic, is a term that I learned in reading a book called Playing Big by Tara Moore. And she explains this inner critic as this voice. And I've even named my voice. I call my voice Lucy, last name Fur. And if you put it together, it's Lucifer. um, and this inner critic voice is a voice that, by all intents and purposes, is meant to protect you.
Mm,
It is often perceived as a negative tone, negative voice of the things that you can't do or shouldn't do, or oftentimes make you kind of feel bad about yourself. And it is something that, may have kind of developed from life experiences you've had or things you've seen, or
mm,
um, just kind of going through your journey in life, and it develops. Um, the idea is to acknowledge it, to understand that it is there, and to not fight it, but to comfort that voice and let that voice know, hey, I understand you're trying to protect me. I mean, at the core of it, it's really to protect you from
mm,
harm and to keep you from maybe doing things that are scary, or things that may be a little audacious, because it doesn't know that inner work, that inner voice doesn't know if you're going to be okay. Um, and so it might be shooting you things like, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you're not ready. Oh, you need a little bit more skill.
mm,
Maybe go get that one more degree before start your business. All of those things to protect you. And so it is the idea that you comfort that voice and not fight it, because fighting it, it really just amplifies it, if you will. Comforting it is a little bit more softer, letting it know that I hear you, but I'm okay. And I appreciate you trying to comfort and protect me, but I'm okay. And that does something. So how it relates to your question and how it relates to maybe what you're showing up on the outside is,
mm,
if you're listening to that inner critic voice and you haven't really acknowledged it first and you haven't comforted it, it can grow into something that you portray in your actions, in how you live out your life. Again, that voice could be something like, you're not good enough, or you're not really ready. So think about how that may play out. If you're hearing that voice and you're listening to it, the I'm not ready, the I'm not good enough will play out in a very just, kind of casual approach to life, or it could play out in many different ways. It could play out in a self-sabotage way.
mm,
There's many ways that this could play out. So it can, as an example, play out in a way where you don't really care about how you look and how you present yourself. To kind of just keep with the example of what we're talking about. If it plays out in that way, it could be you not caring about your image. It could be,
mm,
my image doesn't matter, and I don't really care about what, I'm portraying and how people perceive me and things like that. So I think that is that inner critic not acknowledging it, not comforting it, not really addressing it, can play out into, potentially self-sabotaging behavior.
mm. It's a lot to dig into with that. I love that answer. Thank
I
you.
know.
So, one of the things you said really stuck out to me and stood, I think is the word I was looking for, stood out to me. In terms of something that I had seen a while back on anxiety, which was this, I'm going to butcher it because it's been a while, but a monk, a video about a monk who says that the way that he deals with his anxiety is instead of fighting it and trying to
Mhm.
say, how do I get rid of this? How do I stop feeling this way? How do I fight against it?
Mm,
He really just paused and kind of acknowledged it and said,
mm,
hey, you're here
yes.
and you're here and kind of stopped
Mhm.
there, acknowledged it. And there's something about that act of not fighting it. It's like the act
Yeah.
of fighting it that really, I feel like pulls a lot of us down. Again, whether you're a man or woman, I think we all kind of deal with these kind of insecurities or this inner voice that's like, you're not ready, you're not good enough, you're not, especially, those who may have struggled during this crazy time with this pandemic. You know, maybe you lost your job,
Yes.
maybe you're struggling in a relationship. I mean, you're hearing all these voices. It's kind of a natural piece of human behavior where you hear this voice that says you're just not ready or you're just not good
Mm,
enough.
mm,
So, you know, to
mhm.
turn it a little more positive, what are some things that you would recommend that people do to interact with that voice? And notice I'm not saying silence it because I'm not sure that's the
Yeah.
answer based on what you just said. What are some practical things that people can do to talk to that inner voice or even identify it? Do we even realize we have it?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great question. You referenced, and I think was a Buddhist monk that talked about that. I read a book called The Art of Communication, and
Mm.
I will probably butcher his name, but it was the same concept in that book. I think it was Thich Nan or something. I am messing his name up. I already know, but I know the book title is called The Art of Communication. Um,
Mm.
but that concept is in that book, and which you reference is not fighting the voice, acknowledging it, comforting it, which I was mentioning. Some of the ways and tactics to your question that you can do that would be to, first, if you are so, just in tune, and that you are self-reflective and self-aware even, kudos to you, because that's, you're already well ahead of the game, and that is a journey for some people. So if you realize it and you know that that is a voice right away, that's half the battle. Sometimes we don't know that it's a voice that needs to be comforted.
Mm.
So and to your point, actually, it's not necessarily silencing it. It is letting that voice know that you're okay. A practical way could be, at the risk of seeming a little weird or wonky, is talking to it. And that could come in many different forms. Maybe it's not talking to yourself, but maybe it's reflecting internally. I joke now that, when I wear a mask going out in COVID, I can talk to myself all the time comfortably and no one knows, and I feel good about it.
I love it.
So, take whatever, way works for you. But it could be an internal reflection of, I know I'm okay. I know I've got this. And these are the reasons I know that, because I've done it before. And just reflect on examples where you have done things before and overcome things, and you've excelled at the things that may seem still a little scary to you. Remind yourself of those things. So that's one way to kind of comfort that voice. Remind yourself the things you've done.
Mm.
Talk to that voice. Reflect internally. I've got this. There's something I repeat a lot is, I am scared in this moment, but I'm okay. And end with those statements, that I am okay or I am well. So acknowledge, yes, this is scary right now, but I am okay. And that's a statement that I just repeat a lot. I am well. It's at the end of this is scary, but I am okay. So, that's one way. Another way is visualization. I do a lot of visualization in my own personal meditation and reflection. Visualizing what you want. So that visualization is powerful, because oftentimes we have to see it, and so it's picturing the outcome that you want. It almost automatically silences the voice, because another voice is now overpowering that voice. And I say silencing in a soft way, but it is that the another voice is now so loud that it's like you're not even hearing this other voice, because you're visualizing this outcome and this future that you want. And it is so powerful, and it's so poignant, and like you can almost touch it, that other voice is like, oh, where'd it go? Like you don't even hear it. So those are a couple ways. Again, I'll reference the book Playing Big. It was just transformational for me, by Tara Moore. She goes into some depth around other ways that she would recommend. Yeah.
That I feel better already. I feel like we're we're silencing the inner shy introvert Ashley who doesn't love doing this, but pushes herself because she cares so much.
Yes.
So just continuing on that thought, I think there's just some really powerful ideas. Would you say that the same is true for people who are looking at the way that they look outwardly right now. You know, we don't have to get dressed every day. We don't have to look our best. We may not have had a haircut in a couple of months. We
Mm-hmm.
may not have shaved if we're men or women, however, we may
Mm-hmm.
not be showing up looking our best when we see in the mirror every day what we look like. Would you give similar advice, for the outward appearance?
Absolutely. And I would introduce another thought of vulnerability. Um,
Mm,
and I think it is a place of vulnerability, um, almost dismissing the ego, if you will, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable in that. And I think that that vulnerability sets the foundation. And I'm not just saying let yourself completely go. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But set the foundation of vulnerability. Let your ego go first. And as you set the foundation of vulnerability, it allows you to just be honest with yourself that things have changed. I don't have to play by the same rules, if you will.
mm,
Um, my favorite phrase is give yourself grace, and I repeat it over and over. And I'm gonna have to figure out who I got that from because I feel like I need to give them some credit and quote them at some point because I don't know who I got it from, but I've been using it so much now that I'm just like, man, they should probably get credit. But give
right.
yourself grace. That it is a different playing field. So you may not feel the same way, and you may not have the same motivation or energy to do the same things in the same way. So that's just the foundation. So let's just acknowledge that we're going to have to be vulnerable. Um, I've been very vulnerable. I'm showing up. I haven't had a haircut in God knows how long.
Me
And
neither,
that's a,
but with the long hair,
yeah,
it doesn't really matter.
yeah. That's a place of vulnerability for me, because I'm used to having my hair cut and shaped in a certain way, and I don't have
Mm,
that. So I am being vulnerable, getting on video and recording and saying, you know what, that's okay.
mm,
Um, but even in that foundation of vulnerability, you still want to, and the foundation of giving yourself grace, you still want to make sure that you are defining what progress feels like for you. So even if you have to redefine what that progress feels like, know your target of progress so that you don't completely just let yourself go.
mm.
Um, there may be a such thing as giving yourself too much grace. I don't know.
What is
um,
that like?
but right, what does that feel like? But set your goal for progress. So progress could mean once a week, I am going to, for women specifically, put on makeup. Maybe that's your goal for progress, and that's kind of how you measure what progress feels like, and it makes you feel good. Um, for men, it could be, once a week if you have the capability and you shave, or, you might groom your mustache or beard if you have one, or your hair, or whatever it is. I'm giving just kind of random examples, but you know what it is for you. Define it for you. So define your progress so that at the foundational vulnerability, you're okay that it won't be the same as it was pre-COVID, but you've got now this new kind of target. And again, it's progress, not perfection, because I am not getting on here tonight looking perfect by any means. I gave you all some eyebrows tonight, and that's it. Like, that's what you got tonight. But define it for yourself to where it makes you feel good, and you can measure it, and you can see that you're making progress. This week I put on a shirt, and I put on some earrings, and whatever it is for you, not perfection. Um, don't set a goal for perfection because you will
Mm.
exhaust yourself, and it's honestly just truly not healthy. So progress, not perfection. Be vulnerable, and give yourself grace.
Trying to take notes while I'm holding my phone. This is very challenging. No, I love this, because I think, it goes to a conversation we were having earlier about burnout. I mean, you cannot
Yeah.
be
Ugh.
all things to all people, including yourself, at all times. And if you
Mm,
hold yourself to that standard, you're just going to run yourself into the ground, and then you don't have
absolutely.
yourself to give to that work, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, is how to really flourish in that work that you're put on this earth to do, that only you can do, only you have the
Yes.
strength needed to accomplish that mission. And if you're
Yeah.
holding yourself to this really high standard of looking perfect all the time, whatever that looks like for you, you're just gonna burn out. Uh,
Mm,
so I just
wow.
think that's really important to underscore. I love the progress, not perfection. It's something I say in a whole other context. So I appreciate you saying
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
I was going to ask you what you feel like would help people in this time feel their best when it maybe they don't even know what that is, or
Mm.
maybe they don't feel comfortable going out per se. Um,
Hmm.
and I think you really addressed a lot of that, but any other tips for people who, um, how can we feel our best even if we can't achieve that daily perfection?
Mm. Yeah. I relate. Let me just say that I can relate. um, I would reiterate defining it for yourself and not letting anyone else define it. Like, I
Mm,
went on a rant on Instagram some weeks back about a post that I kept seeing pop up around, if you aren't using this quarantine time to, start a business if you wanted to, or do all these things, um, then it wasn't that you didn't have time. It's just that you don't have discipline or you're lazy or something. I'm paraphrasing, but the concept behind it was, if you're not using this time that you have to do these grandiose goals and dreams and
mhm,
achieve it and come out of the quarantine with your new business and all of this, then you weren't disciplined. And the idea, my rant went on to say that you can't compare, everyone's situation's not the same. And when
mm,
I say define it for yourself, I really mean that, because you can't look at other people and what other people are doing and say, oh, well, then I should have done this.
mm.
Um, my mentor always says, don't, how did she say it? Stop shoulding on yourself. So
Oh,
don't
yeah.
should this and should that. Stop shoulding on yourself. Because
Yes.
their goals, someone else's goals, is not your goals. It may not be the same situation. In my rant, I was talking about parents who have become teachers and may have multiple toddlers at once at home, and they're trying to teach, third grade math and some
Yeah.
preschool activities. Like, that is completely different than someone who, like me, doesn't have children. So anyway, the situation's not the same. Define what it means for you. So what
Mm,
does your progress look like and feel like for you? And live by that. Like, actually you reminded me of this earlier today, that my comparison should be my own progress. Like, am I better today than I was yesterday? And if
yep.
that's the case, I'm winning. I'm winning. I am excited because my progress is better than it was the other day. So I think, just really think about progress for yourself. Set your own goals, set your own measurements, be true to yourself, be kind to yourself, give yourself grace. And then the other thing I would say is, specifically just around the outer image piece, the dress, the how you present yourself. I really
Hmm.
feel like it's cyclical. It's a cycle, not cyclical necessarily, but it's a cycle, in that your inner confidence really feeds how you dress up and show up on the outside. And so, in the same way, does your outer confidence in how you dress and maybe choosing to, dress up nicely or wear lipstick for women or something like that, will then feed how you feel on the inside. It's a cycle. So, one
Hmm.
feeds the other. And as you do that, as you choose to do that, then you may notice that, oh, I dressed up today and it made me feel good. Like, I feel a little bit more like myself, if you will. There is a cycle in that too. So that's something that could also maybe help you maybe feel better about yourself. Like, choose to dress up a little bit and then you might feel a little better. And then as you feel a little better, you might,
Mm.
change your own progress goals, your own. You might redefine those. So I think those two things are something you can kind of, use to apply for your own self.
I feel like that was a mic drop that we might be done right there. That was so good and so rich. And I love how you just described that cycle, because it's so true. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately. I know we've been talking about, just defining where you are in your process, not where everybody else
Yes.
is, because there are so many other factors that are going into what other people are doing that are not related to what you're doing. And
Yes.
it's you're comparing apples
Yes.
to oranges and then just feeling bad, and then that becomes cyclical.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
whereas defining, I love what you said about just kind of defining for you what makes you feel better about yourself. So,
Mm,
is that clothing that you're wearing to your Zoom
right.
meeting or your whatever your engagement is? Is that, I don't know, just more self-care? Is that
Mm,
a nice hot shower? What is it that makes you feel
mm,
your best so that you can kind of get proactive and not feel um, kind of behind and let that cycle get the wrong direction for you. That was so good.
mm-hmm.
Whew, all right. Well, knowing that we can't get much better than that, one question I really wanted to ask before we wrap up is how we can help others around us. So,
Mm,
most of my audience or my target audience is around people who are new leaders or frontline leaders, but those of us who may not have people under our care could think about colleagues when I'm asking this
mm-hmm.
question. But what can we do to help those around us really feel like they're showing up at their best, whether they've gained the quarantine 15 or whether they, don't look perfect today because
Mm-hmm.
we're just not perfect. No matter who we are, what stage of life, and what gender, or whatever. We're not going to be perfect. And so, what are some
Yeah.
things that we can do to help those around us feel confident and feel like they're showing up good enough?
Oh, that's a lovely question. Just the just the insight behind the question, or even the question itself, is just a beautiful thing that you're thinking
Thank
like that. um, this is a way, like, what you're doing, Ashley, I think is great. And, I'll just reiterate, just how important I think the work that you do is,
you.
for people in
I
the
did not pay
capacity
her
of
to
their
say
work.
this.
Not at all. It's just true. I actually spent an hour talking with Ashley myself earlier today, and I just left like, oh, I feel so much better. And like, I just didn't know what I even needed. And I walked away with everything I needed. So,
The power of
just,
coaching people. Listen, even if you don't
yeah,
book me, please get a coach. Everybody needs a
it's
coach.
so important. It's so, so important. So, that's a way, sharing your voice, sharing your gift. Is a way, and you don't even know who you're impacting sometimes. Like,
Yes.
sharing your gift is a way to make people feel better. But then I'll kind of go back to vulnerability.
Hmm.
When we are open to being vulnerable, um, being okay not being perfect, and showing up in that way, it honestly gives permission for other people to do the same. Like, if I am okay showing up saying,
Yes.
you know what? Like, I don't have on makeup tonight. I drew in some eyebrows, and like, I'm okay. I don't have a haircut. Um, but I am here, and I'm going to give you everything I've got because I care. Um, that vulnerability is like permission for other people to be like, oh, let me exhale. I can do this. Like, I'm not perfect either, but I feel better about not being perfect. So I think at the heart, at the core of it, is being vulnerable. It's courageous to be vulnerable. If
It
you
is.
listen or hear or read anything from Brene Brown, she reemphasizes how vulnerability truly is the measure of courage. Be vulnerable, and just watch how it just becomes something that unlocks the door for other people to feel better about themselves, because it's not that pressure that you have to be perfect, because that's not real anyway. So,
Oh, and I want to
yeah.
emphasize that too for kind of my audience, because as someone who will always be a student of leadership, but who has read a lot of books on this topic, what you're saying is so true of leaders. If you,
Mm,
as the leader, set the tone that it is okay not to be perfect, your
mm-hmm.
team understands and will embrace the fact that it's okay not to be perfect. You set the tone as a leader. And I can't emphasize that enough, because so many leaders feel like they have to be perfect and they don't. And in fact, when they do emulate that, the team feels like they have to be perfect and they can't make mistakes. And then they don't feel comfortable speaking up when they don't understand, or they're having a bad day or they need help. And it's just this cycle. I mean, we keep talking about cycles, but wow, what a powerful, that's one of the best things you can do as a leader. Now, of course, it needs to be calculated. You're not
Mm.
saying, spilling everything that's happening. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it's such a powerful tool and thing to do. And, really what we're trying to do, we're not, in the perfect state right now. Like I've mentioned several times, I'm
Yeah.
shy. I don't love doing this, but I do it because I believe, and I know you agree, Myra, that there's somebody out there that needs to hear your message, that
Yeah.
needs to understand that it's okay not to look perfect,
Mm-hmm.
that we all have that inner critic, um,
Mm-hmm.
and that, really now more than ever, it's important to just acknowledge that and show up anyway, and
Yes.
let each other kind of play off of that humanness. I'm not even going to say weakness or anything. It's human to have that. Um,
Yeah. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
so, whew, okay, well, I feel better. So I hope those listening feel better, whether you're watching live or later. I guess, I was going to ask you for a couple of action items. I feel like we've already summarized those. Maybe we just bring them out again. A little bit of vulnerability goes a long way.
Mm.
Um, Maybe, if you're more introverted, maybe journal, or if you're more extroverted, talk to somebody about what makes you feel good about the way
Mm-hmm.
you look. Um, and it looks like um,
Got a
we have a
comment.
question from the audience.
I,
Thank you, Christine.
yeah.
Christine is a very, very special guest on our live today, who is joining me as a summer intern, and so we're so thankful to have her all the way from New Zealand joining us. So
Yes.
thank you for
Hi,
being here, Christine.
Christine. I've heard so many great things about you. Happy to have you on board.
They're all true, and you're helping Myra think about wanting to have an intern as well. So
Not even thinking this is happening. I've heard like if you could clone yourself and just send her my way, that would be perfect. Thank you.
okay, no problem. Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. So Christine is asking a really good question about summarizing some of the books that we've mentioned. So Myra, I know you talked about Brené Brown. Is there a particular book by her that you recommend?
Yeah, so I'll mention the other two that I started with. So the first one is called Playing Big by Tara Mohr. That's Taramohr. Playing Big by Tara Mohr. The second book is called The Art of Communication. And God knows I will butcher his name, but I know it's a three-part name. The first name starts with a T. Um, and the third book is Daring Greatly by
Mm.
Brené Brown. Daring Greatly.
Oh, good stuff. Are those the ones that you mentioned when you did the session at Emory, the keynote? Are those the same
The
one?
Playing Big was.
Okay.
The other two came a little later in my journey, but Playing Big was one. Hmm.
So if people want to follow more of the work that you do around this kind of inner confidence and outer feeling good about how you look on the outside as well, outward appearance, they can follow you at Capri Brand, which is
Yep.
CAPRI brand.
Yes.
And then is it capribrand.com as well?
Yes, it is capribrand.com. So the at Capri Brand is Instagram, Twitter, and then my page on Facebook is Capri Brand.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time and for being the first guest in what I hope is a series. I've been thinking,
I hope so.
about, I have a whole list here. So, how to flourish in your work through today was around confidence and you know, the topics we've already discussed, but, with less
Yeah.
dysfunction. I bet you know who that is. By being better leaders, by harnessing your strength, by having a clearer plan. That's someone Myra
Hmm.
and I know very well. Having better data to make decisions, being more inspired, better self-care, being more resilient, have
Mm,
mindfulness, less bias. I mean, I've come up with all these.
these are
So if
great.
you are listening to this
Wow.
and you found this to be valuable, this is what happens when an introvert gets to take their journal outside in nature. Um, If you found this to be valuable, please leave a comment or send me an email. You can find me at ashley@flourishingworkllc.com. Contact Myra, whatever way you can. Let us know if you found this valuable, and we will continue because I want to make sure it's something that speaks to people and meets their needs during this time. So we tried to keep it short, simple, powerful, to the point. Got some books to do. You've got or to read. You've got some points to remember about
Mhm.
being vulnerable, identifying what makes you feel good, how to help others do the same. And so, let us know what you want to hear more of. And we appreciate you all being here tonight and listening later.
Yay. Thank you. And thanks again, Ashley, for doing this and following your heart and you being vulnerable as well. This is awesome. Glad to
Thank
be
you.
here.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Have a good night and take care.
Thanks. Bye.